there's a lot of stuff that you have to, that I calling massage it to make it look tactically correct and real, as in how they move. And, you get people, I don't read comments anymore, right? You get people say, well, we never do that. And I tell people, like, look, have you ever worked on a show? No. Okay. Then you don't understand how it really works on a show. For me, I'm proud of the fact of what we do on the show, because I think our show and SEAL Team are probably the two that show tactics like they should be shown. And of course, there's times where things, don't look correct, but it's TV, right? Like SWAT would never do investigations, but they have to build the show around something. They just can't sit there and watch SWAT guys go to training all day. And then, you go to lunch and work out and do whatever. So you have to build stuff around a story. And, that happens frequently, with that kind of stuff. But, I just tell people, if you have not worked on a show, you really can't give input on, oh, that's not going to happen. And that this industry, the entertainment industry, likes people that work with them. So if you're the hard ass cop that comes in and goes, no, we will never do that, and they'll never do that, they're going to go, next guy, have a good day. Yeah. And so, and people, you can stick to that plan if you want, but you will never get anywhere in this industry. You have to go in and say, whenever in the notes, if I see something that I say, okay, that really doesn't look good, I always give them an option. It's like, okay, this would never really happen. It's way over the top. How about we do this, and I can make it work and massage it to make it look at least tactically like it's good. And, 99% of the time they're like, yeah, great. We love that. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. So let's get into this. So originally from Maine.
Originally from Maine, small town in northern Maine called Holton. I don't know if you know, well, the East Coast, you're going back to Chicago, but the East Coast, the I-95, right where the I-95 ends before you go into Canada is where I was born and brought up.
Now, what took your family to that portion of the country?
Honestly, I don't know, to tell you the truth. It was kind of just like, that's where I grew up. I think my whole family was there forever. And, grew up there, and that's, I grew up there and then went from that to joining them. Well, moved to Florida for a year. My dad was a truck driver. We owned, it's a long story. When I was younger growing up, my grandfather owned a zoo. We owned a zoo in the little hometown that I lived in Holton.
What's the population of the town?
Oh,
I call it a town.
It's a town. I'd have to look. I want to, I'd have to look. 3,000 maybe. So very small. Oh, it's a very rural, when I was there, it had probably, you had one traffic light typically, and the first McDonald's came in when I was growing up. So stuff like that. So it was pretty small. It's a pretty small town. And my grandfather started a zoo, years before that, and kind of built it up. And it was, I don't know, hundreds of acres, and we had everything. We had different animals, from lions to bears to giraffes to monkeys to, just, every animal you can think of. And, growing up, one of the weird things is, we had a pet lion when I was growing up, and, it was kind of funny because when I was younger, me and my dad would drive around with him in the pickup because it was a small town. And today you would never be able to do that. And, he didn't have any fangs or claws. And so, he would come to bring him to our house, and my brother and I would play tug of war with him. And, he would have that lion growl when you're playing tug of war with him, which, back then I didn't really think anything of it. I'm just playing with him. But then you come to realize how they're actually called the king of the jungle is. We would go and my dad would get cow heads from the local slaughterhouse, and we'd bring them back, and we had other lions that were, in their pens, and you throw in the cow head, and they would just grab that head and just crunch it with like one bite. And at that time you're sitting there going, okay, that's crazy.
Now, when you say no fangs, so just the eye teeth. So,
yes, exactly.
So still teeth to chew, and obviously
definitely.
To bite.
Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. So one of the little interesting things of me growing up, that was, I loved growing up in a small town. It was, we get up in the morning. If it didn't have a motor on it, I didn't want to do it. So I grew up with dirt bikes, snowmobiles, four-wheel drives. And, I loved getting up, going out of the garage, just ride out of your garage on your dirt bike or snowmobile, and then come back later on in the day and go to school and in a small town. So it was great growing up in a small town. You know?
Now you mentioned your brother, small family, just your mom, dad, and two.
Yeah, my mom, dad, and my brother's 4 years younger. My mom and dad passed away. My dad passed away at 53. He had a cancer, and my mom passed away in 2018. She had MS, and so that kind of got the best of her, unfortunately, and passed away. So my brother still lives in all my relatives still live in Bangor, Maine, which is 2 hours south of where we grew up. And my brother works for FedEx doing some stuff there.
You mentioned going down to Florida. I'm assuming that was later in your life, but as a young kid, do you remember wanting to get out of Holton?
That's a good question because, yeah, when you're growing up in a small town, obviously, you watch TV and you see things and you want to get out of a small town and grow and enjoy and experience the world. So, my dad, he had sold the zoo, sold the animals, sold the property, all that kind of stuff. And then he got a job on an oil rig off the coast of...
Didn't want to keep the zoo in the family business.
Well, it was at the time when the financial stuff had kind of hit. And the zoo used to be one of those things where people from all over the state, when you go on your field trip as a kid in school, they would come there, and it was busy. And then, the financial stuff hit. I can't remember when that was, and it kind of just drug it down. And so couldn't really afford it anymore. So we picked up, and my dad got a job on an oil rig down off the coast off, I can't remember where it was at, but we lived in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, right in the Panhandle. And I moved my junior year in high school, moved down there, and I spent my senior year at Fort Walton Beach. And, it was kind of, you're moving away from all your friends and moving to another city, which, it was a good time. It was fun and, got to see something else. And then after a year, he didn't want to do it anymore. So we moved back, and he was a truck driver, worked hard his whole life. But he also played hard. So, didn't really see him that much. My mom was pretty much a staple in the family, stayed home all the time, and took care of us and kept us me and my brother on the straight and narrow.
Were you a sports guy?
I was a sports guy, played basketball, soccer, baseball, and then, kind of towards later on, I had, typically you want to buy a car when you're a kid. So then I kind of pared down the sports to just baseball and bought a car. And then after that, it was graduation. It's like, okay, what do I want to do? So then, we had some recruiters in town. So just walked into an office and went into the Navy office and said, hey, I want to join up.
No aspirations for college?
No, not really. That wasn't really, my family never really pushed that. It was kind of, it was a rural part of, rural town. And so it wasn't, you need to go to college, you need to do this, you need to do that. Like I said, my dad was a truck driver, and my mom was like a housewife, stayed at home and took care of us. And so it wasn't really pushed that hard. So I didn't really try to push it myself. It was more of, I just wanted to get out of a small town and went into the military and joined the Navy.
Did you look at the other branches, or was Navy your first and only choice?
Navy was pretty much my first and only choice. I walked in and they had the office in the post, and their office was in the post office, and just went in and talked to the recruiter, and then it went from there. Joined, and, and then I was off.
So right out of high school?
It was, right out of high school. Yep.
So what year was that?
82.
And going into the Navy, do you have any long-term goals for there, or was it just a short-term thing to get you out of your small town?
I think it was a short-term thing to get me out of a small town, but also it was something to experience something different. And, joined the Navy, went to boot camp in Great Lakes, graduated from there. Well, make a long story short, when I was in boot camp, I never really had a rate. I never picked a rate when I went in. So it was kind of like, which, back then it was probably kind of stupid, but I just wanted to get out of the small town, went in and joined. And I just remember in boot camp, they were kind of like, well, okay, what do you want to do? You want to, and I go, I don't know. And they're like, how about, submarine? You want to get on a submarine? You want to be a SEAL? And I go, well, what? I didn't know what a SEAL was at that point. So I was like, yeah, I'll do submarine. So, enlisted, and I was on a submarine for 4 years in San Diego. And that's how I got to San Diego.
At any point in time during that 4 years, did you ever think about extending, or was it, pretty much when that 4 years was done, you were done? I
think, you always think about it when you're in, because, back then the military, the benefits were great when you got out, if you stayed in for 20 years. And I think, nowadays they kind of pare it back a little bit, but, it's still great benefits. But at that time, you know, it was the Cold War with Russia, so we were always going to sea like on a consistent basis. I mean, it was numerous, you know, 6-month deployments on a submarine, and you know, we were always doing off the coast of Russia, doing all the, you know, secret stuff and all while we were there. And so after 4 years of going to sea all the time, it was kind of like, you know what, I think I just want to try something else, and got out, and I did a couple odd jobs. You know, I worked at a computer repair business called Sorbus for I think a couple of years after that, and then I got hired delivering packages for a business called Airborne Express, which is now DHL. Did that for a little bit, and then San Diego PD was hiring, so I went in and took the test, and then got hired onto San Diego PD in 1990.
Had there always been an interest in law enforcement?
There was, you know, coming out of the military, being a kid, you know, being a guy growing up, you know, you always play cops and robbers, and then you always want to be in the military. You always want to do that stuff. So it was you. I think it's a progression because, you know, a lot of military, the police department is a paramilitary organization anyway. People can say what they want. It's just structured that way, and that's what you do. And when you get there, when you get hired, it was just provided structure, and that's what I like. I like structure. Even now, like on the show, when we have a 2-month hiatus, it's like, okay, I need structure, you know, so then, you know, I'll do something on the side or get a job on the side. But back then at that point, it was great because, you know, I had gotten married in '89, and, you know, then getting a job that would support me and my wife and, you know, future having kids. So that's how that started in 1990.
Growing up, did you have anybody in your family or friends who were law enforcement or military?
Nope, not growing up. Not really. It was just me. You know?
And already being married at the time, was your wife supportive about you becoming a cop?
Yeah, definitely. She was supportive. I think back then she didn't really know what that involved, but yeah, definitely she was supportive at that point. And then, went on in 90, went through the academy, graduated the academy, got to my division, which was Western Division, and I stayed there for a while, doing patrol, which is obviously the meat and potatoes, of a department, and that's where all the action is pretty much. I mean, so did that, loved it, and then went from that to being on a crime suppression team to a beach team, and then from that to SWAT. And then I did narcotics. And then for a lot of my time when I was on the department, I did dignitary protection with the mayors of San Diego. So I did that for 15 years, doing executive protection, PSD work and all that kind of stuff, which I still do today on the side when I have some time off.
Was the executive protection pretty much what you ended your career with?
Yeah. I ended there in 2018, retired in 2018. Had the show, had a friend. It's kind of weird that, I had a ex-Navy SEAL Master Chief that had retired, called me up out of the blue, hadn't talked to him for a little bit, and said, hey, you were on SWAT. So I have some friends in LA that are coming out with this show on CBS called SWAT, based on the old TV show and the movie, and they're looking for a technical advisor. Are you interested? And I said, sure. What do they do? I was getting ready to retire in like a year, and I was in the drop program. And I said, yeah, what do they do? And he's like, well, you just show them, how to be a SWAT guy. And I'm like, all right, sure. So the first year when the show came out, I was commuting back and forth, and I had, being in law enforcement, it was like I never took vacation. So I had, like 1,600 hours of vacation. So I used that all up coming up here. So the last year of work, I was not at work a lot, and I went in and explained that to the mayor, and he said, hey, I back you 100%. You're getting ready to retire. You've been here, you've done your job 28 years, and I support you 100%. So I said, great. So I just went full bore and then retired like 6 or 7 months early from the PD. And then I went through the whole cop divorce thing, and then I moved up here full time, or up to LA full time.
Prior to getting the offer to apply for this job, what were you looking at for post-retirement, or did you have any specific plan? I
was one of those guys. I was in the drop program. Other than that, my 401k and all that kind of stuff, as back in the day, as a lot of cops, I use that. My daughters, you want them to do better than you. And so I got them, they were big volleyball players. And there was a private school in San Diego that, wanted them to go and play there. So it was kind of, okay, I don't know if I can really afford that. So, you know, go in, talk to the administration, the whole thing. And they gave us some financial aid. And I finally said, okay, fine. So I take money out of my 401k for the next, you know, they're 4 years and then 4 years for my younger one, and paid for them partially out of my 401k to go to this school. And so after that, it was, you know, my drop money that I had when I retired. And so I came up here and started working. You know, I'm up there every day now on set pretty much.
So you knew you were going to be working.
Yeah, I knew I was going to be working.
Post-official retirement.
Yeah, definitely. It was either going to be, I mean, I had never planned on doing that. That just came out of the blue. I had no idea what that was or anything. So I was, you know, I mean, I was doing the mayor's detail in San Diego. And so that's a pretty visible detail. So you get to know a lot of people, get a lot of connections through that job. And so after that, I was going to end up probably doing some security for, you know, different friends that own different companies and do high-end security for high-profile people. And so it was either that, and that's pretty much what I was set on doing when I got done. And then this came along. So
going through, well, take a step back. With all your years doing SWAT and security detail, had you had the opportunity to do any type of advising work in the Hollywood industry prior to that?
No, not at all. And that's why it just came out of the blue. And my buddy was like, you just show him how to be a SWAT cop. And I'm like, all right, that sounds good. And so went up to the show. We did training. I think the show started in 2017. We're in the 6th season now, which is, you know, a lot for a network show. We've been renewed for the 6th season. We're filming it right now, but right prior to pre-production, went up and started training the cast on the back lot of Universal, because it was kind of funny going on the back lot of Universal. Well, let me rewind. So to get the job, I had to interview with the producer and the unit production manager, the frontline guys that, you know, run the show. And then they had me interview with Sean Ryan, who created The Shield. And, you know, after that, I talked to him, and then they had me interview with Justin Lin, who is a director that has directed, you know, Fast and Furious, Star Trek, a couple Star Trek movies, I think. Interviewed with him, and then they called me up and said, you're in. And so that's how I started that whole process. Get there the first day, threw my feet in the fire, and I show up on set the very first day. I just remember it, and there's like 1,000 people, and somebody yells cut, and 1,000 people are moving around doing all these different jobs.
And you're just trying to stay out of the way.
And I'm like, I just got off the van, and I'm like, what the hell is going on, man? Some AD walks up to me, hey, you the TA? I go, yeah. And he's like, all right, I'm going to take you over to the cast. Or took me over to the cast. And I recognize him because we had been training before that. But back lot of Universal, did the training with them in a big warehouse. It was kind of funny because, you know, you're used to doing the tram ride around Universal, and, you know, you're looking at all this stuff and seeing people walking, and I'm, you know, walking on the back lot of Universal, and people are driving by waving, and I'm like, yeah, this is weird, man. You know, being a cop, a regular guy, you're like, yeah, this is just weird, dude. So went into a big warehouse, and in typical SWAT cop fashion, you know, I got him to bring me some yellow tape and just taped off a whole, you know, a residence inside the big warehouse. Props brought us some rubber weapons, and just continued to rep them out and doing entries, doing room entries, doing building entries, how to walk, how to do transition drills. You know, everything that we do in law enforcement, you know, we line them up in a line, you know, get them to walk forward, you know, malfunction, go to your secondary, blah, blah, you know, all that stuff that we learn when you're in law enforcement. And so we did that, and we did that for a couple days. And at the end of that, it was pretty funny because they were going to have a big meeting there. All the producers, CBS, Sony, they were all going to come in, and they were going to have their little big meeting. So I put a little pressure on the guys. When everybody walked in, we were getting ready to wrap it up, and I'm like, okay, guys, we're going to do it one more time. And so they were like, okay. And so all these people are sitting down, and they're getting ready to go through their whole itinerary, what they're going to go through at the meeting. And they look up. And so I had our guys do their thing, and we wrapped it up and left. And afterwards they came out and said, dude, that's pretty good. We're going to like the show. So after that, went to set and then started that whole thing where I was like, wait a minute, what the hell am I doing? You know, and just went from there, and I've been there, you know, 6 seasons.
Going backwards a little bit, for somebody who might be listening, who's got the SWAT background, sees the potential opportunity for a technical advisor, what's the nuances of the hiring process that you could give advice on? Yeah,
definitely. You know, it is a hard nut to crack in Hollywood for this type of job, because it's usually by word of mouth. So there's not really an application process. I mean, unfortunately, guys that have the experience and guys that have the training for this type of job in Hollywood, it's hard to hear it by word of mouth. And like I said, I just got it through a friend that knew somebody. So, it's not a unionized job. It's none of that. And so you just hear about it. And a lot of times, producers and directors, unfortunately, and you can see it on shows, on law enforcement shows, on movies that have SWAT cops or SWAT teams or whatever. You can see the, how horrible it really looks. And, I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it, everybody sees it. And so they go by, okay, who is the prop person? Prop guys are great. The armors are great, but they don't have the training, tactical movements, how to hold a gun going into a building or cutting the pie, just doing all that kind of stuff. And so they rely on, to save money, they rely on a lot of people in the prop business to say, okay, this is how you do it. Right. And actors, a lot of the actors, they don't know any better. They just have somebody telling them how to do it. And they're like, oh, okay. And they take that as gospel. Right. And so that's the unfortunate thing about Hollywood. But I think now there's a lot of people getting involved. There's a lot of ex-military guys, a lot ex-law enforcement guys, and but you still have the people come up because they don't really check. When I first came on set, the armor, he's like, hey dude, I checked your background. I knew some guys in San Diego, so I called them and checked your background. And he told me, he's like, you know what, that never really happens in a lot of shows. Guys just come up and say, this is my resume, and people will hire them, or you'll have somebody say, hey, I got a guy. Right. I got a guy named Paul. He can come in and do it. It's like, okay, he'll come in and do it. And then after a while, they're kind of like, wait a minute, does this guy really know what he's talking about? And, so unfortunately that's Hollywood. It's just, that's the way it is. And you try to get, people trying to break in. It's just very hard unless you actually know somebody that's coming up, a producer or whatever, that's coming out with their show. So that's the nature of that business.
Have you ran into an instances where, from your input as the technical advisor, hey, we would move this way, but it doesn't work well on camera?
Oh yeah, definitely, all the time. I mean, I go over, I get all the scripts beforehand from the writers, and I go over the scripts, and then I try to head all that stuff off. I go over it, I give them notes, I'll type up some notes and send it back to them. And, the writers, that's their Bible, right? So they go by that. And our writers are very collaborative because it's a SWAT heavy show. It's just not like a law enforcement where you have a cop for one day or a SWAT team for one day coming in and doing their thing. Our show is like everyday SWAT stuff, and we have law enforcement. So I go over all the notes, all the scripts for the writers, and then I type up some notes and I'll send it in. And most of the time they take my word for it and they'll change a lot of stuff, but then there's times they want to keep stuff in there for the story. And then we go, and then on the day, we call it on the day when you're doing the filming, I go over all the stuff before we do that. And now it's with our guys, it's kind of, they know what to do with the basic stuff, and they they do change things where, okay, well, it's only a 42-minute show, where I would like to have them breathe on the tactical stuff where you have a stat coming up to the door, or when you go into a house, you have them show the whole team going through the bottom floor. But, that's what they go. They go, Odie, it's only 42 minutes, man. And I'm like, okay, cool. So they kind of pare it down.
We showed that 3 episodes
ago. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I'm fine with them showing it at least every once in a while. But, they edit a lot of stuff where, they don't show the stat coming up to the door. They'll show you kicking the door. Or, they don't show you going through the whole house. They'll show you kicking the door, and then they'll show you with the first room or upstairs or whatever. And that's the thing. Sometimes they have a lot of doors and rooms and in buildings, and there's only 6 people in the cast, 5 people right now. One of the cast members left this season, but we have people filling in for that. And the thing is a house like yours, we only have 5 people, right? In real life, you'd have like 20 people flowing through here, 20, 25 people thrown through the whole house, clear it, and you're ready to go. But there we have 5 people. So it's like,
or with 5, it's going to be a very long episode.
Yes, exactly. So when people come in, I'll tell the director, and directors for our show are great because we have a lot of repeating directors that are guest directors. And I'll say, okay, how about we open the door up, but Hondo says closet only, right? Boom, the easy money. Same thing with like a bathroom, like a 1 bathroom, very small, opens it up, bathroom only or whatever. So that gets rid of a lot of stuff. Or, when we go in, it's like, okay, we would check every room, well, we only have 3 people. So it's like, okay, act like the door's locked, right? You go up, you go like this, where you're supposed to be going, right. The guy's down at the end of the hall, but act like these doors are locked when you go by, check them going by. So stuff like that. So there's a, there's a lot of stuff that you have to, that I calling massage it to make it look tactically correct and real, as in how they move. And, you get people, I don't read comments anymore, right? You get people say, well, we never do that. And I tell people, like, look, have you ever worked on a show? No. Okay. Then you don't understand how it really works on a show. For me, I'm proud of the fact of what we do on the show, because I think our show and SEAL Team are probably the two that show tactics like they should be shown. And of course, there's times where things, don't look correct, but it's TV, right? Like SWAT would never do investigations, but they have to build the show around something. They just can't sit there and watch SWAT guys go to training all day, and then, you go to lunch and work out and do whatever. So you have to build stuff around a story. And that happens frequently with that kind of stuff. But, I just tell people, if you have not worked on a show, you really can't give input on, oh, that's not going to happen. And that this industry, the entertainment industry, likes people that work with them. So if you're the hard ass cop that comes in and goes, no, we will never do that, and they'll never do that, they're going to go, next guy, have a good day. Yeah. And so, and people, you can stick to that plan if you want, but you will never get anywhere in this industry. You have to go in and say, whenever in the notes, if I see something that I say, okay, that really doesn't look good, I always give them an option. It's like, okay, this would never really happen. It's way over the top. How about we do this, and I can make it work and massage it to make it look at least tactically like it's good. And, 99% of the time they're like, yeah, great. We love that. Let's do it. So they work with me really well. And, even the camera guys, I mean, we've gotten so as a machine on our show that the camera guys know that I really don't like to have our guys exposed outside. If they're standing on the corner trying to cut the pie, I don't really like to have Hondo or Tan or, Deacon standing outside the corner and the guy just looks at him so he can shoot him. So they kind of understand the different camera angles and magic of Hollywood. They can move to the left a little bit to have it look like he's behind more cover. But then, you have, the cast, and obviously people watching want to see the cast. They want to see their faces. And so there's times you see them not wearing helmets, which would never happen, or not long sleeves, which would never happen, but they want, people to see them. So it's like cutting the pie around the corner, right? So I'll have Deacon cutting the pie around the corner where, you just show a slice of whatever you have. But, the director's like, Odie, can I just have his face out a little bit more and have his rifle lowered a little bit, right? So that's the stuff you have to massage. Like, yeah, sure, Deacon, just lower your rifle just a little bit and you can have your face out a little bit more so it can be on camera. And that's what people like, and Hondo's always like, Odie, they want me to show my face, it's the money maker for the show. They got to see my face. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. So stuff like that, if you're behind me, if Paul's behind me and you're talking to me, I'm never going to turn to talk to you. Right. But if the camera's over here, they want to turn into the camera and say, yeah, okay, we got it. Let's breach or whatever. And so stuff like that, you have to massage to make it look right. And, I'm sure some people watch and go, oh yeah, we'll never do that. And that's wrong. But they just don't understand the whole process of how it should work.
But even from the flip side, you could film 100 different SWAT teams moving through a building. Yeah. 100 different teams are going to move and do things differently.
Exactly right. And that's what I tell them. You get people that come on the show. You'll get, we are probably, between us and SEAL Team, I think we're the two shows that have more veterans on the show than anybody. And, we're pretty proud of that, having as much veterans in law enforcement and ex-law enforcement or current law enforcement on the show as background and stuff like that. And so we're pretty proud of that. But that's what I tell the cast. I mean, you always get people coming on and saying, hey, Tam, why don't you come shoot with me this weekend or whatever? And whenever they go out and they do things, I always tell them, like, look, this is a deal. When we come here, we're on the show. I've trained you how to do this. This is how we do it on the show. When you go out and somebody says, oh, okay, well, we do it this, or I do it this way. Okay, you have to understand that that's not the wrong way. It's just a different way. So people do things differently, and it's not wrong. It's just they do it differently. But when you're here, this is the way I do it, and that's the way I want to do it. And so, they're pretty good about that. They're great about that. And like you said, it's not the wrong way. It's just people do it differently. And, you get people that come on the show, background guys that come on the show like, well, I was trained by whatever, and I'm like, okay, number one, you're not there. And number two, you're on this show, and on this show, I'm the TA, and you're going to do it the way I would like you to do it. When I come on your show, then I'll do it the way you want to do it, keep my mouth shut and do it. But, the cast has been great. They like to soak things up like a sponge. And, now at this point in season 6, I'm just tweaking them here and there and showing them how to do stuff that they probably haven't done before. And we're, the stories that we go through, we have a lot of action, and then sometimes we don't have a lot of action, a lot of talking and stuff like that in SWAT headquarters. But, for them to go through the training we put them through in the very beginning, and then we also rented out a power plant before season 1 up in Santa Clarita, Newhall area. We rented out a power plant, and we did training like all day for 2 days. And so, they're pretty good at moving and stuff like that. There's still little tweaks here and there. I still got to get on them. Sometimes they get lazy. Sometimes, I got to light them up when they get lazy and they don't look good. And, I tell them, I say, you guys look like shit, man. You got to tighten it up and you got to look good. And Deacon's like, well, how many times when you go in and you do a warrant service, how many times you do it? And I go, once. He's like, yeah, this is like our 27th time. And I go, yeah, but we did pre-work beforehand where we were doing, mock-ups and we're doing entries into it. And so we do that, whatever, but they're, they're good. They're great. They treat me good. They take everything for like a sponge. They soak it up and they want to learn. And we have guest stars that come on and they always want to learn. We have 2 girls that are on right now, 2 females that are on right now. One plays Powell and one plays Cabrera. And the first day they're, hey, I want to learn, and can we do it again? Let's do it again. And which I have them do it again anyways, but right when we get done, let's do it again. Let's do it again. So, people are willing to learn. We were, last 3 seasons, and we've shot the 2 first episodes of every season for the last 3 years in different countries. So this season, we were in Thailand for 6 weeks.
Does it work into the story?
Yeah, it works into the story. This season, it's, Hondo goes to Thailand and gets into some stuff with his buddy. But we were there for 6 weeks. Last year, we were in Tepoztlan, Mexico, just south of Mexico City for 3 weeks. And then the year before that, they were in Tokyo for like 4 or 5 days doing that. So, back to what we were talking about, I just take pride in how they move, how they do things, and I don't let them slide when it comes to that. Now, the directors, and they like all their stuff their way. And so I'm always with the director. I'm always sitting, we call it Video Village, where you have all the monitors and you watch the scene unfold in front of you. And then if I see something, I'll go out and I'll say, hey, Shemar, just, turn your gun this way to look at it, or go forward a little bit farther. Don't stand right there. Don't stand in front of the door when you go up to it. So I'm tweaking them here and there. And, the directors are great. So, I take pride in that.
You mentioned before about if you come on set and you try to basically bully your way around, my way or the highway, you're going to be shown the door.
Yeah.
So obviously, like any other relationship, you have to build it over time. But I would imagine early on, was it a little more intimidating to watch something being filmed and go, ooh, I'd really rather him cant the rifle this way, and have them reshoot it or go out and make the change? Or was it very simple or easier from the get-go to be that voice?
I think it was easier from the very get-go because they put a lot of, on my shoulders to do that. And so everybody from the top down, Sean Ryan is a showrunner, Andy Detman, Shemar and all those guys, they expect me to do that. And they, in the very beginning and now, they wanted it to look, as real as possible on the movement, the tactical side of that. So they have been very accepting, and from day one for me to go in and like I said, the directors have been great. I sit at Video Village where we watch the scene, and I'll tell the director, like, can we do one more? I'd like to see Shemar do this, or David do this, or Jay do this. And I'm like, yeah, sure, let's do one more. But you have to be able to, like I said, in Hollywood, time's money, right? So you got to be able to have that attitude to go in and say, hey, Paul, you know what? Do it this way, hold it this way, and move forward just a little bit. Boom, done. And you're back out and they're starting to shoot again. They love that stuff. They don't like it when you go in and you're taking 10 minutes to explain to them,
got it.
Okay, first I want you to do this, because they're sitting there looking around going, okay, we need to get going. Let's go, because they already have enough delay during the day because you have issues like with cameras and all that kind of stuff. So they don't want... I make sure that I'm not that issue that they're not waiting for. So, and that was from day one, and they've been really good about that. I'll just go in and, can we do one more? Sure. And they're usually, every director to a T says, hey, Odie, is that good? Does that look good? And I go, yep, that looks good. Let's move on. And he's like, cool, we'll move on. So they're really accepting of me giving them direction on if we should do it again or not.
Along the lines of how you say you really are trying to present an accurate depiction of a SWAT team. And so somebody made a comment to you of, hey, you know, how many times did you serve a warrant? Well, we just did it once. But what you didn't see us doing was the 1,000 reps that we did in a live firehouse. Where I'm getting at is, have you taken the team or have they given you the time with them off filming days to just go through movement reps?
Nope. They like to, they do it all on, we do it all on set. And so when we first started, that's what we did. We did, you know, I was on the back lot of Universal, and then we rented out a power plant and did that. And so they pretty much got all trained up on everything they have to do since then. So now, like I said, I just have to tweak all of that stuff. So, you know, they go out and they go to the range on their own. They do things on their own. You know, a few of them go to the range frequently. But we're just, you know, for us before the pandemic, it was like 14-hour days, 15-hour days, right? Now, after the pandemic, our show has gotten great because of producers, Paul Bernard and Jim Skura are, you know, we have 10-hour days, 11-hour days max, and the crew loves that because they get to go home, spend time with their family, you know, and do things that they want to do. Right now we have Sunday, Monday off. And then, after Christmas, I think we're going to go back to having Saturday, Sunday off. But, you know, I mean, it's a big grind. A lot of shows, most shows are still doing 14-hour days. And, you know, our show, you know, we got one of the best crews. Everybody gets along. There's no jerk. There's, you know, everybody gets, you know, every once in a while, some people argue, but that's very far and few between. Our crew is just awesome. And, you know, they work great with me, but, you know, and the thing is with me coming from law enforcement, you know, I retired coming to law enforcement to have that community, accept me, you know, the crew. And I mean, the crew is great. I get along with them great. I mean, you know, when you're in law enforcement, you're kind of in your little bubble,
right?
And you hang out with your friends that are in law enforcement, and same thing with the military. And then, once you get out, you know, some people I'm sure feel kind of lost because they don't have those friends again because everybody's still working, or, you know, they haven't retired or they moved away. Like for me, you know, everybody I know is in San Diego. So I moved to LA. The crew, you know, they know what you did in your past life, but they just, you know, they're great. They, you know, they make, you know, we joke with each other all the time, and we have a good time. So, but, you know, they're very accepting of me on set, and, you know, it's good to know that outside of law enforcement, you are, you know, wherever you go, there's always places where people are totally accepting of law enforcement because they know what you did for a job. And you know.
Well, going way back, and you even use the reference, the divorce from police work. I would imagine, though, going from full active law enforcement to this position did a lot for you just personally and emotionally, because even though you stepped away from the full-time job, you were still kind of immersed in it because you were still imparting the knowledge that you've got from all your years of it.
Yeah, definitely. That's the other thing. It's, you know, when you're a cop, you know, your salary isn't the greatest, right? And then realizing when you go to do, when I go up there to do this, you get paid more doing this that's fake than you were when you were a cop. And you're like, wait a minute, I've been doing the wrong thing for like 28 years. But then you're like, well, I wouldn't have got here if I hadn't done that 28 years. But,
right.
But, yeah, it you know, it wasn't, it was in my wheelhouse, right? So that made it a lot easier. And like I said, the whole crew, directors, producers, they were all accepting, and they all wanted it to work. And so there was a lot on my shoulders. And, you know, I had a couple of people from PD help me out the first couple of days and to help get them trained up. And then, but I've been the lead TA for like 6 seasons. And most of the time it's only me. I still have a buddy come up if we have to do a location scout, because they still want, started out, I was just a TA, and then it turned into, you know, location scouts, going over the scripts, doing, costume documents, going over those and trying to give some input on those, going over props, giving some input on those. So, going from that to, you know, I've helped out on a couple other different shows. So it's in your wheelhouse. And for people that are getting ready to get done with law enforcement, there's so many jobs out there that are law enforcement, friendly, that you can do. I mean, I still do, PSD stuff on the side every once in a while when I have time. But it's just, there's so much out there for you to do. You just have to find it, and you have to be proactive in trying to find that. But you get people that retire and say, well, I'm going to fish the whole time. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to play golf. And after a year, they're like, yeah, I mean, for PD, for San Diego, I mean, people are like, oh yeah, when they were getting ready to retire, like, I'm going to go fish my whole time. And people can do that. Some people do that, but a lot of people, I see them leave 1 year. And then I was in turning my stuff in my last day, and I see somebody come in picking up their stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, you retired last year? And they're like, yeah, I got bored, and so I'm going to be reserve or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, you have so many skill sets as a law enforcement officer, because all you do is talk to the community, and then you have the tactical skills, and you have the patrol skills, and you have investigative skills. And so you have all those skills that can come into play when you're not, when you retire. But I think sometimes people don't look at that as being, or don't look at that before they retire. It's just like, okay, boom, I'm retired. What do I do now? But you just have to look a little bit forward. Like, if I hadn't have done this, I would have got into, doing security stuff.
I want to stay on the TV show for a second, but if I forget, please remind me. I've got a couple questions on the security detail work. So one of the things any SWAT team across this country always battles is, where can we get more money for more new gear? And everything evolves. You go back 10 years and we were in the big turtle shell, vests, and now it's all down to plate carriers. And what I'm getting at is, does the production company or the staff tell you to stay on top of the most current trends with SWAT gear?
I talk with props, and then, sometimes I'll give them some advice, and they're pretty much on top of it a lot. The prop department, they do the research and they look at all that stuff. When we first started, myself and the guy that had me interview, the Navy SEAL retired Master Chief, him and I got together and we kind of went over stuff and kind of gave them stuff that we should probably have. And they went into that, and our prop department, Paul Byers, is in charge of that, and he's always looking for new stuff. I mean, it's like, that's what I tell them. People are like, hey, I don't know if you've ever watched the show or not, but we have the Eagle's Nest SWAT headquarters with all the monitors and the cool looking, industrial stuff inside. And people are like, hey, the guys on the crew are like, hey, did your headquarters look like this? Is like, no. Not at all, because cities, and that's what I tell our cast too. I mean, the cities, they have budgets, right? And so cities can only afford to buy so many things, I mean, if you want to buy a Bearcat or a Gurkha, which we have on the show, it's kind of like, those things are expensive, and cities are, they're all about, hey, can we R&D that, and then they bring it in R&D, and then, hey, well, yeah, we don't have enough money to buy that, right? So that's the problem with cities, is budget wise. And so on the show, we actually do get a pretty good budget, and we try to incorporate new things every season, because that's what, the writers are like, hey, and the producers are like, people want to see GAC. People want to see the new stuff. People want to see something different. And I go, we're a department, we're SWAT guys. We don't really get a lot of different things. It's the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So whatever works, SWAT guys usually use until it doesn't work, or we come up with something different. And, that's the funny part about it is, we got all this new GAC and, like all this IR stuff. And I'm like, yeah, we never had any of that stuff, man. So that's the funny part of it is, I always tell them, like, the city has a budget. We wouldn't be able to get this or whatever. So, yeah. So
you've now crossed the line, though. You've actually been a reoccurring acting role. How'd that come about?
I don't know if I'd call it acting, but one of the writers had called me up at one point, season 1, I think it was, and said, hey, we didn't cast this part and it has a line. Would you want to do it? And I said, sure, I'll do it. I'll try it. I mean, I'm up to try anything. I'll try it. So he goes, okay, well, let me see if I can clear it through the showrunner, clear it through CBS, because it's a whole thing about auditioning and doing all this kind of stuff. And so he called me back in the afternoon and he said, all right, man, you're in, you got it. So
there's okay. Still politics even in the movie industry about just moving you in and putting you in a role?
Definitely. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. They don't, it's a big deal. He had to go through CBS to get it cleared. They had to talk to the showrunner to get it cleared. And like I said, they were great. And they told him, yeah, sure. And then it came, and then it just kind of progressively got more in the second season. And, I think I'm probably in between, 6 and 10 or 11 episodes a season, but nothing major. I get a line or two here and there or whatever, but it's fun. It's something different, and all the cast is always like, well, did you ever take any acting lessons? I said, I was undercover narcotics, man. I acted for my life, dude. So, but there's no way I'm going to sit there and do like a whole page of dialogue like those guys do. I'm like, yeah, no, that's okay. You can give me like a paragraph and I'm good. But you want me to do like a whole page, then we'll talk about it.
That's a lot to remember.
Yeah, they do a good job at that. They memorize all their lines, and you get people come in and they'll have their sides with them and they kind of refresh their memory. And then you get some people come in like Patrick Saint-Esprit that plays Commander Hicks. He never has his sides. He comes in and he knows all that off the top of his head, and he just boom does it. And so yeah, it's but it's you really don't get in. I mean, I wasn't really intimidated by that. It was just, since I had been hanging around those guys and watching them the whole time, I mean, it's kind of just, it wasn't really intimidating. It was just kind of, when you do see, when the first time I did it, when I was in a little group with the cast, Patrick, who plays Commander Hicks, he's been on a ton of stuff like movies, like Draft Day, SWA, a ton of stuff. And so was, Kenny Johnson was in a bunch of stuff. Shemar's been in a bunch of stuff. Jay. And so it was kind of like you're standing there and I'm got my line and I'm standing there. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I see all these guys on TV or in movies all the time. So it's like, all right, I'm delivering a line with these guys. Cool. So, but it's not really, I wasn't really intimidated by that. And, I'm not really, when we first started, you don't really, I'm not really one of those guys that gets infatuated, like, oh, cool. It's, whatever actor it is, it's like, they're just like us. Right. So, I just treat them accordingly, how I'm supposed to treat them when I'm training them. And if I don't like what they're doing, I'll tell them I don't like it.
I would imagine that not being awestruck, starstruck, whatever word you want to use, and just coming in and looking at it as a job has definitely helped propel you in the industry. Yeah,
definitely. That's a good way to put it. You go in, you do a job, and you keep doing that job, and you, like I said, I tell the cast, I go, and even guest cast, when they come in, when I train them, it's just kind of like, I'm doing my job. I'm going to teach you how to do this, and I expect you to do it, because when they're on camera, it reflects on me, right? And I go, and it also reflects on you, because you go to do another show, or if you're on TV and somebody goes, you look like crap, then that reflects on me. And, and then there's some times where something does happen, because we do a take like 3 or 4 times, and an actor the first time, they might not, they might have their weapon on safe, or they might walk around the corner, and I'm like, no, I want you to cut the pie. But the director likes the rest of the scene, and he'll go, oh yeah, I like that scene. And, there's not really much I can do when it's on when it's aired, you see them and I'm like, ah, dude, you're killing me. But that's the nature of Hollywood, They have the final say on what they're going to put on the screen. And there's times where I have the script supervisor who sits at the monitor, and she's the one that, if somebody forgets a line, she'll yell out their line, or she'll make sure everything's in place. She'll make sure, your headphones, if they were setting here, the next take they're setting there again instead of over there. And so if we're on a scene and I like that scene with what's going on with me, I'll just say, hey, I like that one. Can you put in there that I like that one? Or like the other day, one of the guys, I think it was, I can't remember who it was, but had their foot outside, they were cutting the pie, but their leg was outside the corner. And so I'm like, can we do another one? And the director's like, yeah, we can do another one. So I had him put his leg back inside the corner. We did. He did it right. And I went to her and I said, okay, can you just mark that as being the correct way that he's supposed to cut the pie? And she's like, okay, cool. So she'll put it in her notes. So they see that when they go to the editing room. Okay, Odie said this, so we probably should have this scene in there.
We've all seen the movies, though, and TV shows where the set advisor missed bad.
Yes, definitely. And, and even there's times when I look at it and I take notes I'll watch the show and then I take notes on the show, and then I will go back and tell the cast, like, okay, last night's episode, you got to be careful of this, be careful of this, be careful of this. So, I'm all in, I'm all involved in it. It's all of our show. But I take exceptional, responsibility for what they look like when they're doing tactical stuff. And like I said, SWAT, we would never do investigations, but if they're doing an investigation and they walk up to a door, I just make sure that you're not going to stand in front of the door. You're going to stand on the side of the door. You're going to have a guy on the corner. One of you guys stand on the corner. Well, can we have them both in camera? Okay, well, have somebody stand on the side of the door, somebody stand off the stoop, looking in the window kind of sideways so you can see what's inside. Okay, yeah, that'll work. So it's a lot of massaging with everybody.
Has this springboarded you to other opportunities?
Yeah, I've helped out on another show that's coming out in 2023 called The Night Agent. I don't know if you ever watched, I helped out one of the actresses. There was a show on a while ago called Clarice. I helped,
kind of a spinoff of The Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah. I helped her out do some tactical stuff. The director called me up and said, hey, can you help her out do some tactical stuff? She's never done anything, before the pilot episode. And I was like, sure. So I worked with her for a day. So it's, I have people, asking me to help them out with, tactical movement and all that kind of stuff. So I've done that, numerous times for people outside the show. It'd be great to be able to have a place I could go as a business to do that, but I haven't gotten to that point where I can afford that. And so I just go to wherever people are at if they want to get training or whatever. But the thing is, you also have companies up there that do training, but and that's the part where I tell the cast, like, okay, so when you go there, it's like, you're going to do it. They'll probably tell you to do it this way. And you can just say, hey, Odie told me to do it this way. If you're the person doing the training and you're not willing to learn other ways and you will say my way is the only way, then that person is not willing to learn any other way. Like, I'm an old school guy, right? So, I know now when the new thing coming out is holding your weapon at port arms, right? You hold it up high. I'm an old school guy. I like low ready, and people are like, well, you hold it up, you can get it a lot quicker. And I'm like, well, I don't really see how it's a lot quicker. And then you have people say, well, that came about because when you have a shoot house, the instructors are standing up on the top. And so if you lit off a load, then you'd hit. I'm like, okay, whatever. I just like it. I like it like this. I like to have it in my shoulder. People like to have it up here. I like to have it here ready to go. Boom, you're up. And so that's just me, and people have different ways to do things, and it's not that it's wrong. It's just they do it different.
Being that the show is based on LAPD SWAT, do they have an advisor as to the way LAPD does it?
They do not. I'm the, it's on my shoulders. SWAT guys, it's pretty much, tactics are pretty much the same all over the place. You can only massage them so much or change them so much. And so, I talk to our guys every once in a while to see if there's anything changed. 3 people going into a room, so it's on me. There's one of the guys that used to be on, but he was just a patrol guy to advise like on the uniforms and what they look like and stuff like that. So, I still have a contact that I just talked to about, like, do you guys have this on your uniform? Stuff like that, like basic LAPD stuff, but SWAT stuff, yeah, it's all me. So
for somebody wanting to go down this path of advising, you mentioned that a lot of times it's who it's just opportunities. What would you advise as far as the best way to start developing that network, that connection point for people in the industry?
Yeah, I'd say, if you want to start trying to do this, it's a lot of shows, through the military. There's some contacts through the military. You have film commissions and all that kind of stuff. So if you can talk to a film commission person, if you can get on a show as a background person, if you can go online and look for productions that might be looking that you look at it and you say, okay, they might need a TA for law enforcement. So I'm going to send them an email and show them my background. And a lot of times they might not even look at it. You never hear back. But sometimes when they do, then they'll say, hey, can you email this guy? But for me, like I said, it just came out of the blue. So it's hard to crack that nut because it's usually only by word of mouth or somebody and it's kind of a small clique in Hollywood. And like, I haven't even talked to other TAs, right? Because everybody has their own little thing going on. Like, some guys will do movies, and then you have some guys like I do TV show. I'll do a TV show. I hear of other TAs, but I've never met them because you're too busy doing your own thing, and I'm there every day. So, I got contacted by the showrunner for the show that I helped out that's coming out in 2023. So that's how it works, is they'll send you an email like, hey, you're on SWAT, can you help me out do this? And it's like, yeah, sure. There's a show on Apple that I sent my buddy to help out on for a couple of days. So it kind of goes like that. So it's a hard nut to crack. So it's just tough, man. It's like coming up and getting in the background or talking to the TA there to see what they did. Sometimes some TAs, they have guys that work for them, 2 or 3 guys that work for them on a show or a movie, and you can try to get in that way. Sometimes it's just the producer knows, hey, can you get me a SWAT guy? Okay, sure. And then they call a SWAT guy, right? So there's not really, like I said, there's no union, a bank where they go, okay, we got all these SWAT guys, let's call this guy up, he's going to be here tomorrow. It's just by word of mouth. And that's what I said. A lot of people don't do their due diligence in checking backgrounds. And so you get guys that have say they can do it, or they've been paper pushers or whatever. And then it's kind of like, okay, where'd this guy come from? And sometimes they get exposed, and sometimes they can bullshit their way through the whole thing.
Can somebody come in and volunteer their time to help get their foot in the door?
They can ask. A lot of times now with the pandemic and COVID and stuff, they, like for us, we used to let people come up and watch, visitors come up and see, watch filming for a day and how we shoot stuff and, all the action and all that kind of stuff. But since the pandemic happened, we, for a show, and I think a lot of shows are like the same thing, they don't allow visitors just because they don't want somebody coming in from the outside and, COVID or whatever. But I think it'll get back to that point, hopefully, where you're going to be able to bring people on set to be able to watch and see how it works.
Do you see the TV industry kind of running headlong into, all right, we're done with COVID, or is it a very timid progression forward?
It's been very timid, I think. I think in the near future, because it went from the very beginning, we were wearing masks and shields. And for us, it's like, we start shooting in July, right? Like beginning of July, usually after July 4th or beginning of August. And it's like, 90, 100 degrees, and you're wearing a mask and a shield. It's pretty brutal. And then we went from that to wearing just masks outside and inside, and then we went from that to wearing masks only inside, and then now we don't have to wear them outside, and then the whole vaccination thing came into play. So it was just like a lot of different rules and regulations. And so now I think in the near future, or hopefully in the future, they're just going to do away with all of it, just because now I think we're at that point where people are just done with it, and there's science behind, it's there, but it's never going to go away. So, hopefully in the near future, we'll be getting rid of masks all over the place to go inside. We still wear them inside, but we don't have to wear them outside, which I can see that, I get it. And I don't have a problem with wearing it inside. So it's all good.
Do you have a desire long-term to get over to the movie side? And with that, what's significantly different between doing a movie as a TA and a TV show? A TV show, you're doing it fairly quick. Like you're just going in, I'm going in and telling, hey, Paul, do it this way real quick, and boom, you're out. On a movie, you have a little bit more time to work it out, to do it, and they might take a couple days to do a scene, right? Or maybe even longer. So that's the difference in the TV world, where we're used to moving quick. Boom, you want, time's money, so let's go. In the movie world, you have a lot more time to do it, let it breathe, and do it that way. Do you have a desire to get to that level?
I don't know. I'm happy where I'm at, and hopefully we get some more seasons. If not, then I'll go out and I'll find something else to do. Like I said, I do PSD stuff on the side, so I still do that to this day. Every once in a while, when somebody will call me up and say, "Hey, you still?" Yeah, sure. Because a lot of people that own companies don't live in LA, and so they get a client or whatever, and they call their person, and they're like, hey, can I get somebody to help me out doing this? And then I'll get a call like, hey, can you go here for a couple days and help this person out, or this group, or this family? Like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And so, I'm still involved in that. But I'm just, for the show, I'm just really busy because I'm there like every day, almost every day. And anything to do with law enforcement is on the show is what, they have questions for, whether it's patrol, whether it's, going into HQ, whether it's a patrol car, whether it's how to pull up the patrol car, whether it's having the cop in the background with his uniform on, so interrogation room. So I'm there like every day. So it's, and I love doing it. I have fun. It's in my wheelhouse. And like I said, it's a great job, retirement job. And, we'll see what happens in the future. And if not, I'll find something else to do. For
the personal security detail work, do you find that most companies want SWAT and PSD while you were a cop, or have you seen cops make a transition into that who didn't do it in their active job?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen cops do it that have not been in their, have not did that in their law enforcement job. You know, you can go out and there's, you know, you can get some training here and there doing PSD classes, or you can do all that kind of stuff. And so I think when you do the investment in that and do some classes, it's definitely worth it, because, you know, nowadays with everything going on, you know, people are asking for people a lot more, and especially like in LA area, you know, with all home invasions, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of the high profile clients, you know, they want somebody to be with them, either going someplace or staying at their estate or doing whatever, because of everything that's going on. But yeah, there's definitely jobs out there that you can do when you get out for, you know, PSD stuff. I mean, there's a lot of other jobs besides that, but PSD stuff is like, a lot of times that's where the, you know, law enforcement gradually goes to, because that's what you've done is, you know, that type of stuff for your career.
If I'm sure we couldn't hit, or I couldn't think of every possible question that somebody might be having in their head. If somebody's got more questions for you specifically, can they reach out?
Yeah, definitely reach out. My email is OD as in dog Gallop, GALLOP, at gmail.com. And, you know, I'll answer them right away. Usually I'm pretty busy going over scripts and all that kind of stuff. And I'll get back to them if they email me, I'll get back to them as soon as I can and give them an answer. I have people that come on set, like law enforcement comes on set, and it's like, hey, how do I get into this? And it's hard to give them an answer, because like I said, it's a tough nut to crack, because you have military guys that are doing it, you have law enforcement guys that are doing it, and a lot of times you don't communicate with each other. And so they do their job, I do my job, and you're pretty much a lone wolf kind of thing, doing your thing, you know? So it's a really hard thing to get into.
Going way back to the beginning when you said you grew up on the Canadian border, do you ever get told that the Canadian accent pops through?
Yeah, I do. All the time. You know, people tell me that whenever I say something like, "Are you from Canada?" I'm like, "No, I'm close to the border." I mean, my relatives could have been from Canada for all I know, but yeah, I get that. I get that all the time.
Well, I appreciate your time, sir.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for inviting me down. I had a great time, and I'm sure I'm missing a lot of stuff, but no, it was a good time. Thanks.
I appreciate you watching. But before you go, if you like the video, please hit that subscribe button. Also, any comments are appreciated. Thank you.